All right, the meeting will please come to order. We got a long agenda, and we have a lot of important senators here today, and we want to be sure we keep them moving because they got to get back over there where they can deal with our House bills. But if we would, please join us. Be sure your cell phones are turned off, and let's please join us in our opening prayer. I'd like to ask Representative Purcell if she would.
Let us pray. Our gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the guidance that you have given us. Let us shine like a lighthouse that is out in the ocean for a beacon to ships that sail the water. Let us, too, be like that so that we can follow the guidance of what the state of Georgia needs. Be with us as we make these important decisions throughout this day and those days coming forward. We ask these things in thy name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Okay, we have a long agenda today, and we plan to, now where you'll know what we're going to do, and there'll be no misunderstanding. I don't want anybody to be upset, but we have Janet. Where's Janet? Is she here? Janet's not here yet? She's supposed to have me an agenda here, so I want to be sure she's supposed to bring that here and have it for me. So what I want to do, we have five, I think that's correct, 5 Senate bills and 1 House resolution, or 4 Senate bills and 1 House resolution that we're going to hear today. Now, where everyone will know this, on the committee and in the audience, 3 of these bills we heard in subcommittee as House bills. They were held in rules, and we are riding with the Senate bills, so there will not be audience participation. I may, at the chairman's discretion, if I feel there's enough need for it, allow a comment or a question. But a couple of the bills that we're going to take up have major revisions, and I will allow some comments from the audience on a couple of these, and I'll do that at my discretion when I think it's necessary to do that. What we plan to do, we plan to take these bills up in the following order. The first bill we will take up will be Senate Bill 184, and that is Senator Williams' bill. So I think that you and Jan Jones together, or is that okay? That'll be good. Then you're going to speak to it. So if you'll come forward and get ready, we're going to start that in a few minutes. And before you start, I'd like to ask in the audience today, do we have anyone, this is your first time visiting with the Education Committee? Would you stand up? This is your first time. Please stand up and identify yourself. Tell us your position and who you are. Pardon, we can't hear you. We're glad to have you with us. All right, next. Margaret, I know it's not you, but you have a visitor with you. And you're a senior, I think, in high school, that's right. And she wants to go into politics and be governor of Georgia one day, she said. So I'm proud of that. Do we have any superintendents or teachers, any teachers or principals here? Please raise your hand where we can recognize you. Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, tell us who you are. Someone's leaning on the light switch over there. If you would please cease your leaning. All right. And turn the light back on, please. Please, you can. Okay. All right. Now, I'm sorry to make you wait just a second. I just got my agenda. If you would get the lights back on, and please stand away from the lights. We have some seats over here for those that like it. First of all, where's Josh Mackey? Josh, where are you? Come forward a minute, Josh. We want to thank Josh and Josh, our sponsors. I think that I've got them here. I want to be sure I get. You have them. You can. Or any of the other sponsors that sponsored our dinner. If you'd please stand. Anyone who was here and sponsored our dinner, please stand up. We are preached. This is all right, and we want to thank you for the wonderful dinner we had last week. That was wonderful. Brandon Hembry. We had Loretta Lepeau, Matthew Gamble, Robert Schultz, and Rodney Patterson, and Josh Mackey. It was a great day, and we certainly appreciate it. All right, before we go any further, I think I got enough here for a quorum now, and everybody's here. So, Senator, we're going to let you go, and if you would, please talk to us. And we're working on Senate Bill 184, substitute, I hope this is the right one, LC 3342 edu03291102S. Is that correct? Jan, is that correct? No? All right, Janet, these are not, let's be sure I got the right. Do I have the right one? All right, Janet, let's get sure we got the right one, John. Jacob, okay. All right, here it comes. We're working from LC 2112588S, Senate Bill 184. All right, it's a proposed substitute to the bill, okay? Senator, thank you.
Got the bill. Section 1, I'm going to let the pro tem of the House speak to. Section 2 is the underlying bill. It simply disallows a policy that would allow for the most recent hired to be the first fired. I think it's fairly simple, and there are few provisions that should be considered when you're terminating people, and those are the performance of the educator, and a measure that was added, which frankly I should have had in there, is a judgment based on the student's academic performance.
Now, Senator, you're on page 2, line 52. Is that correct? Where everybody know where you are,
52.
Okay?
That's really the essence of the bill. You know, in the private sector, this past summer, I had sales were down. I had to lay off people. I sure didn't lay off the last ones I hired. I laid off folks that didn't show up to work on time, didn't produce as well as others, and just made simple decisions about what's best for the business, who was working hard, who was making sales, who was doing their job. We ought to do the same thing with educators. I think everybody should understand that logic.
And we did take this same, Representative Morgan had this bill on the House side, and we did talk about most of this earlier on in the House version. So we'll come back and take questions in a minute. So Speaker Pro Tem, if you would.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to point out a couple things on line 52. The first sentence is language verbatim that passed overwhelmingly in the Senate, but I added one word. A local board of education shall not adopt or implement a policy that allows length of service to be the primary or sole determining factor when implementing a reduction in force. I added the word sole at the request of the Minority Leader Stacey Abrams, so that by adding that word in the context of the sentence, all things being equal, it certainly allows you to take length of service into account at the appropriate circumstances. So, for example, if you had two teachers, you have a teacher who's nearing retirement, and you've got to lay both off, and they've both been doing a great job. You certainly could take that into account, but it couldn't be the primary. And then we added wording that is similar but not exact to what the House committee already passed. That was Alicia Thomas Morgan's, Representative Morgan's. I appreciate her help on this. Is that the local board shall consider as the primary factor the performance of the educator, one measure of which may be student academic achievement or performance.
Okay.
And then the first provision in the bill, I believe, was being carried by Representative Thomas. Is that correct? And,
yes. Members of the committee, you remember we had some resolutions, and they did not make it out of rules, so we're adding them to one of them to this. Yes.
Regarding professional learning rules task force that I believe was last summer that Representative Carter and others participated in, and so the chairman asked if we could add that on, and certainly that's a great provision.
Okay. All right, members of the committee, we will not seek audience participation in this because they have been involved in the subcommittee. But do I have any members that like to ask a question? All right, when I see your light come on, you give your name and all right, 6. Oh, there you go. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Speaker Pro Tem, I don't know if you or the Senator know about this, but on line 56 it says any policy adopted after the effective date does not comply has the penalty. I don't know if anybody has a current written policy where they do have a length of service being their policy. Do we want to include both anything after a policy that's already existing to go into penalty, or that may be a legal question? Do you see my point?
Is Betsy here? Betsy. Betsy here.
Well, it just says that if you adopt a policy after this becomes law that conflicts with it, that it's invalid.
Sure.
So the fact that we're making it law means that any policy that's currently existing will also be invalid if it is in conflict with this.
Did I get your question?
Yep.
Okay, number 15.
I'm number
Dash,
15.
all right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tell me about lines 60 and 61. I don't remember that line from the bill we passed. Was that an amendment?
In the Senate bill, and it was
In the House
this
bill. And it says that if a local school board eliminates an entire program, this doesn't apply.
So, for example, if they eliminated an entire music program or some home ec that, I mean, everyone's being let go if they, eliminate an entire program. But it,
Okay. Number 11, that's represented, okay. Lindsay?
Getting back to the point that I made earlier regarding policies and whether or not they would be valid or not, I appreciate your explanation, but wouldn't it be cleaner to simply say at line 56, any policy that does not comply?
yep, I agree.
Betsy?
So take out after the effective
Okay.
date of this.
So
code
if,
section.
Abby, if y'all would be sure to get that information then. Would you give that again, please?
Well, at the appropriate time.
Oh, you'll do amended, okay,
I'll make
good.
an amendment.
Are there any other questions? All right, I see no more questions, so at this time, I will recognize you, Representative Lindsay, for a motion, all right?
You want a motion on the amendment, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, the amendment. Yeah.
On line 56, strike the words adopted after the effective date of this code section, so that the line will simply read any policy that does not comply, et cetera, et cetera. I think that'll be clear.
That's good.
Does not comply, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. I have a second. Okay, I have a motion and a second to amend line 56 after the word adopted. Any that does not apply. Insert those words. Who's got that? Did you write that down, David? Do you have that, or do you have it, Janet? You have, read it, Ed, one more time. Ed.
Once again, we're going to revise line 56 so that it simply reads any policy that does not comply with subsection A of this code section, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If none, I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. It's adopted. Now I have any more questions or any comments. I have number 10, okay? That is, let's see. All right, Representative Setzler, yes.
Just to the House sponsor, the lines 60 through 61, this code section shall not apply if a local board of education eliminates an entire program.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't add this. It was added.
It was in the Senate.
I mean, did you have a? Yeah.
Yeah, in the Senate. We added it to you. All right, what's your number 4, okay? You're on.
Essentially, we want districts to be able to look at these as two different things. So if you have a situation where they need to get rid of an entire program, that they would still be able to do that without having to look at each individual teacher or educator. So if they have to get rid of an entire program, they of course don't need the employees for that program. So they didn't, under this bill, we're allowing them to remove an entire program without having to look at this policy based on the performance of those educators and all of that. All of those people who were associated with those programs would also be removed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, everybody okay? All right.
Follow-up question about
What's your
that.
follow-up question? Then we'll come back to us. All
You
right.
know, I don't assume that any school board would ever do this, but it sounds like there may be an end round by getting rid of an entire department to go ahead and get rid of a group of employees that they don't want to have.
The example that comes to mind for me was in my school district, Fulton County. They, because of budget cuts a couple years ago, actually several years ago, eliminated foreign language classes for 4th and 5th graders that they had previously offered every single day of the week. So it was an entire program
And it could be they decided the elementary counselors, we decided we will have, they're not required by the state, so they may have eliminated that program in elementary. So they would not have to, they could do that, or it could be, yeah. All right. Any other comments or questions? I have none. Representative Stetser, did you get your question answered? All right. I have no other questions or comments, so I'm ready for a motion. Yes, you have another one? Okay.
I just want to make a motion to pass.
All right, I have a motion to pass. Do I have a second? I have seconds all over the place. All in favor? Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. It does pass, and if you would, who will be carrying this in the House, Representative Williams? Senator Williams, he gone? I guess you will. Okay. Speaker Pro Tem will be carrying it, so go to rules. We're ready to get it out. All right. Next bill we'll be taking up is Senate Bill 38. Senate Bill 38. Senator Rogers, we're glad to have you with us today. Does everyone have the copy? I think do we have the correct substitute? Should be, I hope we're working from LC 334230S. Is that correct, Senator?
Yes, sir.
Everyone have that? LC 334230S. All right. Okay, Senator?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This committee passed this bill earlier this year, and I was not here, so I'm hoping my presence today doesn't diminish the ability to do so again. The Section 1, I'm actually going to ask that, if that's okay, Mr. Chairman, that be struck. I have spoken with the governor personally about this, and I'm not sure that he's in favor of Section 1.
All right, tell us what that section does, just to be sure everybody knows.
That would allow the state school superintendent to add meeting agenda items to the state school board meeting. I've spoken with the Department of Education, and they have no problem with that.
Okay,
with Section 1
that's all that does. Okay.
Removed from this bill. And then the remainder of the bill simply allows the state school superintendent to be put on equal par with all of our other constitutional officers and having some control over his and her staff. Actually, I wouldn't say equal par, almost equal par. This would allow the superintendent to hire those persons he feels necessary for the Department of Education, but would require that the State Board of Education give approval for anyone that was dismissed.
Okay. Basically, that's it, right? Okay. Does anyone have any questions? All right, I have a question. Number 14, Representative Casas.
Senator Rogers, in the Rules Committee where Senate Bill 38 has come back from, there was some issues brought up with the increase to the $250,000 authority that we're giving to the superintendent, raising it from $50,000. Can we once again, for members of the committee, and also that we can once again reiterate it in the Rules Committee, what that implies for the superintendent, as much as how much authority does he have? I think there was a percentage given to us of contracts that would be approved at the $250,000 mark.
I've not committed it in memory. I know that.
I will allow him to comment.
Okay.
And if I'm not mistaken, Senator, I was here when this happened. This amount was larger. And when we had a former school superintendent, a former governor, that was lowered, and I won't call any name, but it was lowered, the former school superintendent, and so it wasn't Kathy, it wasn't Representative Cox, but so I think we're just putting it back where it was originally, yes.
Okay. And I would like to point out that cap or no cap, the violations by the former superintendent landed that person in jail and would have had nothing to do with this anyway.
Right. Okay, anybody else have a comment or question? Seeing none, I have a request. You want to make the amendment, Representative Casas, about striking the... All right. Representative Casas recommends striking Section 1 as the author did. And I have a second. Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye. All opposed? No. All right, that's done. Now do I have a motion on the bill? I have a do pass. Do I have a second? Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye. All opposed? No. It's passed. And I encourage you, because it'll be, the House was closed today, so it'll be submitted tomorrow, so you can go to Rules Thursday. And let's move it on. I'm sure you'll have plenty of help here to get it out.
Representative Davis will help.
Davis will be carrying. Thank you so much, Senator. All right. Next bill we're going to have is I'm going to have House Resolution. And what's yours House Resolution 497. Then we're going to take up yours. Where's Representative Millar? I want to. All right, yours is next. Y'all get together. Who's going to carry it? Okay, good. He said, I was waiting for you. I see you here now, Senator. I'm sorry. All right, Representative Purcell, what's yours now? House Resolution. Does everybody have a copy?
I bring to the committee House Resolution 497, which is an urgent resolution to our local school systems. We've worked with several groups in regards to this, including our state and our superintendent association, as well as the school board association. We have 109 out of the 180 school systems that have already adopted a policy in regards to prohibiting the use of tobacco on the school facilities by the faculty and staff. And what we're wanting to do is to encourage the other 71 school systems and the schools themselves to go forward on their own with the encouragement from your state school board as well as your state superintendent's board, acknowledging that the other school systems have adopted such plans, and we're encouraging them to do this also on their own and implement some kind of program to educate our school children in regards to the negative use of tobacco products. And that's all the resolution does.
All right. Any comments or questions? I see none. So do I have a motion? Have a motion to move. Any? Do I have a second? All in favor indicate by saying yes. All opposed, no. There you are. Oh, you know, one thing, Senator Carter, if you don't mind, because I want to allow some discussion from the floor on your bill, if I may, because I have a couple, we have three presenters. I'd like to let my great friend, where is Senator Sims? Where are you? She's back home. I'm so glad to have her back. Come up here. You're next. I'm going to let you be next. She's so good to have her. We trained her well in the House, and we're just glad she's back. Welcome back, Senator. So we'll take yours, and then we're going to take Senator Carter's next. Thank you so much. All right.
I appreciate that. Mr. Chairman, thank you so very much, and committee members, and it's a pleasure to be in your company again, and I miss you guys terribly. Okay. SB 185 is a bill that provides for the emergency closure of an early care and education program upon the death of a minor or under certain circumstances that adversely affect the safety and well-being of children. Those early care centers, it may be a family daycare center composed of 3 to 6 children, and those are in homes, family daycare homes, or a child care center with 19 students and a little more, and group daycare centers with 7 to 18 children involved. I've asked Bright from the start to help me with this, and they have been a tremendous resource, and they've helped me with the construction of the bill, and they are assisting in the explanation of. So if you don't mind, my legal expert is here today to help me out with this, and if you have any questions about the bill, well, you'll give an explanation. He'll give an explanation first, and if you have any questions, we'll be happy to take them.
All right, so we'll let him come forward this time explaining.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Ashley Peacock, and I'm the Chief Legal Officer for Bright from the Start, Georgia Department of Early Care and Learning. And just to give you a brief background of our agency, we license all early care and education programs in the state, which consists of child care learning centers, group daycare homes, and family daycare homes, as Senator Sims explained. And currently, we have the authority to place an emergency monitor in these facilities when we feel like that there are conditions that threaten the health, safety, and welfare of children in care. But currently, we do not have the authority to issue an emergency closure of facilities, such as an instance where a child dies in care or the imminent health and safety of a child is impacted. So under the proposed bill, we would have the ability to do so, and this legislation would only occur in 2 circumstances for the emergency closure. That would be where the death of a minor occurs, if the death was not medically anticipated, and it was under those kind of circumstances, or if a child's safety or welfare was in danger. And how the bill would work, and this we discussed it at length at the Senate subcommittee meeting, is that First, the department would issue an order of intended emergency closure of the program.
Where are you speaking on the bill where this is?
Yes, Chairman, it's line 46 on page 2.
All right.
And line 46 through 50 and through 51 indicate the circumstances where an emergency order could be issued. Once we had issued that notice of the order of intended emergency closure, the facility would have the right to request a hearing, a preliminary hearing, and that hearing must be had within 24 hours, and that's on lines 88 through 91 on page 3. And if an early caring program wanted to contest the proposed emergency closure, they could do so within 48 hours. Thereafter, the department would immediately forward this request for the preliminary hearing to the Office of State Administrative Hearings. This is contained in line 99 of the bill on page 3. And it goes over to the next page. Thereafter, the Office of State Administrative Hearings would hold a preliminary hearing as soon as possible, but no later than 48 hours after the request, and this is contained in line 102 of the bill. After the hearing was held, OSA would issue preferably an immediate oral decision, but under no circumstances they would have to issue a decision within 2 business days of the hearing. Currently, for our adverse actions, such as a notice of revocation, we have to issue notice, have an opportunity for hearing, schedule a hearing with the Office of State Administrative Hearings. That process takes approximately 30 to 60 days or more. Under this process, we feel like it balances the need of the program to operate and conduct its business with the protection of the children. And we feel like it strikes a fair balance there, so this would give us that opportunity to do so. Also under the bill, if we did issue the emergency closure, a hearing was held and OSA upheld the decision, we would continue our investigation of the matter where the death occurred, and if we felt like that death was under circumstances where rule violations occurred, we would then go ahead with a revocation notice, and under the language of the bill, the program would remain closed while they're appealing the decision to revoke, and that's in line 72. And also at the committee's request, we added additional language to the bill whereby if the program was closed for the 21-day period, that they would notify all parents of the closure so that they can make arrangements for other care for their children. And other than that, we feel like that we support the bill and feel like it would give us an additional measure to protect children.
Why do you feel you need to do this? Have some things occurred that have created some problems for you? Have you had some?
Mr. Chairman, we normally only have, it's very rare to have a death of a child in care, an early care and education program. They vary from 2 to 4 years. Last year we had 3 deaths occurred in child care facility. 2 were determined to be SIDS. 1, a fire broke out in Columbus and a child was killed in care. We feel like that under the current regulations that if a child has died in care, that we don't have a quick process to close where we feel like children are in danger.
All right, I have you have anything to say that before we take questions? You ready for questions? Or while you're there, we'll just go ahead and take questions. All right, Reverend Kaiser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think you asked one of my questions, but I'm wondering if you could just walk us through when an incident occurs, whether it's a death or an injury. Does the child care facility, who do they contact? How does the process begin?
The process begins, all facilities where a serious injury occurs are required to notify the department within 24 hours of the incident. We immediately set up an investigation. We send a consultant out to the center, start gathering information, work with local law enforcement if necessary, work with the GBI, interview witnesses, parents, request medical records. So it's considered categories. If a child dies, it's considered a Category 1. That's the most urgent situation, and we investigate those immediately.
So can I follow up, Mr. Chairman? So if the department decides that they are administratively taking action to close the center, how is it determined if the center is closed permanently? If the center, if there was some reason for them to be of real concern? How is it determined for what amount of time they're closed?
Under the bill, under the original language, the emergency closure was for a period of 30 days. In the subcommittee, we shortened that to 21 days. So it's a short period of time, the closure, and it's typically when the death of a child occurs. And most of these deaths, as I said, there's not many. They do occur mostly in the family daycare home situation. We have typically one adult watching 6 children, and we feel like that's the most vulnerable situation for children.
Any other questions? Oh, let's say, you want to say anything?
In my district in 2009, we did have the circumstance to occur, and this prompted my bill writing because it did occur. And the next day, the facility reopened, and the investigation was delayed, and it was just an affront, I thought, to the parents of the baby.
Okay, Representative Battle.
Yes, thank you. I think this is great. I'm just curious, who's the lead investigation agency when something happens like this? Who is actually the lead agency?
I'm going to let Kay Helwig, who is our Assistant Child Care Commissioner, speak to that, and she's sitting here in the audience, if that's okay.
We being right from the start of that department, okay? And you would refer that investigation to the, if you think it's severe enough. Okay.
And a lot of times we work jointly with local law enforcement.
Okay. Representative Setzler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just trying to understand the scope. I mean, I understand right from the start as a program, but in terms of what this contemplates for other daycare settings that you've got the authority to regulate, what do you regulate in daycare, and what do you not have regulatory authority over with respect to daycare?
I'll answer that at first, and Kay will fill in if I leave any gaps out. Currently, we license child care learning centers, and that's for children up to 19 children and above. Group daycare homes, they have less than 18 children in care. A family daycare home can have 1 to 6 children in care for pay.
Okay.
There are certain exemptions under our rules, such as a 4-day kindergarten. Certain day camps are exempt. Mother's Morning Day Out is exempt. We don't have typically regulation over any programs in the public schools. And Kay, did I mention any others? And that's our general overview.
Okay, so this isn't just a pre-K setting. This could be let's say a lady that's out of her home, that's watching 4 kids, 4 pay, 5 days a week while their parents work full time. This contemplates that kind of environment as well. So basically, what we think of as any private daycare centers, which you.
Yes. By law, if they're caring for more than 2 children, they're supposed to be registered by the department.
If they've got 2 children, or do they have to be registered?
No.
More than 2.
More than 2.
One more question.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I don't
Go
have
ahead.
to ask you.
No, go ahead. You want to know? Go ahead.
No further questions.
No, think about it, and I'll come back to you. All right? All right? 6.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So is this triggered only by the death of a child, or I heard about imminent danger? I was trying to read the legal language.
There's also some additional language, and if you go to page 2, line 51, the other circumstances where a child's safety or welfare is in imminent danger. And an example of this would be if in a family daycare home we had knowledge that the provider was having a registered sex offender live there and be present while children in care, we would seek an immediate closure for those type of circumstances.
Okay, thank you.
Did I get your question? Reverend Sess. Is there anyone in the audience, I'll give you 30 seconds to a minute, that wants to say anything? Please just stand up and let me see you. Because we did not discuss this in subcommittee, and I said there would be 2 bills we'll discuss. Anyone in the audience want to say anything? Anyone? Feel you need to. Now's your time. All right? If not, I have no further lights on. Everybody, I assume you're happy with this. So do I have a motion? Okay, that's what I said. So,
This last imminent danger makes me wonder, a dog in this daycare facility that somebody in regulation doesn't like, would this give them the right to say children are in imminent danger because there's a dog in the house?
I would say, generally speaking, no. If we had evidence that the dog might be rabid or having some kind of disease that could impact children, some contagious disease, I would say yes, we would. But generally, just a pet dog, I would say no.
Let's confirm your LC number. What number are you talking? Because some of the people say they can't find it. I think. What is your LC number?
It is LC 4235.
We don't have.
We don't have that.
We don't have that bill. We're working from LC 4170 ERS SCS.
Imminent danger is not on our.
See, it's not on ours, so we may have to. We don't have the proper bill, so we may have to hold up until we get us one.
Danger on line 93.
We'd work with Betsy. May be able to help us.
Do we not have the bill? Is that it, Betsy? We don't have it. 89. Where is the version?
That's we're working.
No, shh. Where is the version to the author?
It's we work with Betsy on it.
Did you give it to us? It was your responsibility. Was it given to us?
I apologize, Chairman. I've got extra copies here if that would help.
Well, what I may do is suspend until you can get with Betsy. Y'all decide, and we'll come back after the next bill because I want to give you a chance. Okay. All right. I'm going to suspend your discussion. No, we're going to suspend. They got the bill, and let's go ahead and take the other bill up. So, Representative Senator Carter, if you'll come forward to your committee, hold your questions. Representative Lindsay and Representative, let's see, we've got Stevens, and we're so glad. Let's give him a big hand to have Senator Miller back. All right, come on, everybody. Hey, make it. And he's back. Senator Carter, we're glad to have you with us, period. Hey, Senator, we want to say something. If you'll keep him straight, we will. Hey, you're the man. Your bill will move. Okay.
Well, I hope my bill moves, but keeping him straight, you know better than that.
Okay, so let's go ahead and now tell us what we're talking from, because this bill has really been amended, so I want to know.
Is there an amendment?
There's been substitutes or whatever, so help us out, Janet. Let's go.
Okay.
I assume we're working from LC 334227S. Is that correct? Is that correct? Representative Lindsay, is that correct? Yes, that is correct. All right, that is correct. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I encourage you to listen carefully to this very important piece of legislation. So, Senator Carter, you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I bring before you today Senate Bill 79, and again, LC 334227S is the copy we're working from. The intent that I have with this bill is simply to correct something that was done last year that was an error on my part, and I accept full responsibility for that. We changed the school board term from a 4-year term to a 2-year term, and again, that was an error that should not have been made. We have a resolution from the Savannah and Chatham County School Board, a unanimous resolution asking us to change it back to a 4-year term. I will call to your attention that of the 180, I believe it is, school boards in the state, there's only one school board that has less than a 4-year term, and that is one of the largest that we have in our state, and that's Savannah Chatham County. Again, this is something that has been requested by the local school board by a unanimous resolution for us to change it back. And that is exactly what this does. If you will look at the bill, you will see that it simply says that beginning in...
Now, tell us where you're talking from, because we got 3
I will.
This is
Excuse
page...
me. On line 18, you'll see that effective January 1st, 2012, that local boards of education shall be elected for terms of not less than 4 years, provided that longer terms of office may be provided by a local act. You also see that starting on line 28, it gives a breakdown of when these terms start and how long they last. Line 34 I would call to your attention as well. That simply says that the General Assembly by local law may provide for staggered terms of office and term limits for such offices. And then, on or after January 1st, 2015, the General Assembly by local law may provide for terms of less than 4 years for members of boards of education. So, essentially, there's a sunset clause in it as well. And that is it, Mr. Chairman, as far as my part of this bill.
All right. Representative Steve, would you like to say anything about that? Because I know that was part of yours, too. Anything you want to say?
It's a good bill, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I know you. Okay. Now, I have several questions, starting with number 8. Is that Representative Maxwell? Okay. All right, we'll come back to you then. All right. Representative, let's see, it's number 6. That's Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Judgens, all right.
Senator, why do we have the sunset clause? I think it's a good idea to have 4-year terms across the board. I think that's a good state policy. Just curious why there's a sunset clause.
Well, we put it in there at this was an amendment that was actually added to it on the Senate floor, and this was something that some of the other members had insisted on, so I went along with it. I agree. I think they all ought to be 4-year terms. As you know, these are some of the most important board members that we have. You know, I've often said, not to take up your time, Mr. Chairman, I've often said I would never want to serve on a school board. That's got to be the toughest job out there.
I did for 4 years, Senator.
And I admire you, and thank you for your service.
Yeah.
Because I think it is truly one of the toughest jobs out there. And you know as well as I do, and you can attest to this, after 2 years, you're just getting to know the acronyms. I mean, there are so many acronyms out there. I don't see how you guys can even learn all of those.
We said that about the legislature, too, haven't we?
Yeah, well, you could.
Yeah.
You could.
So it was a Senate amendment. Got it. Thank you.
Yes.
All right. Representative Mayo.
Chair, Senator, is this not a local bill that you've drafted specifically to address some local issues in Chatham County that many of your delegation members in the House did not approve of? They do not like this bill. That's why you brought it as general. Is that not correct?
That is correct to a certain extent. I would submit to you that this is local legislation. We are following the desires of the local school board who wants us to change it back. You are correct. We have 6 members of our local delegation. 3 are for this and 3 are against it. But the important thing to remember is that this is local control. The local board has asked us to do this, and we're simply trying to do it. This is the only way we can do it.
Do you have a letter from the I'm not asking to see it, but did the local board?
Yes, we do have.
I just want them to, they're here, okay. You're speaking for the entire board? Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right, Representative. All right, another question, Representative Morgan.
To ask this, but since you know this local issue has been brought to us, I'm trying to understand the history because I feel like Representative Stevens, you brought us a bill that said 2 years, and it was like 2 weeks ago, right? Did I make that up? So I'm just trying to. I had no knowledge of this prior to, but I'm confused. Yeah. So I'm not interested in knowing the politics, but I just want to know the history of the 2 versus 4 and why it's going back and forth.
May I, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, you may.
Also included in some of this bill was some very bad unintended consequences. We put also the 2-year term limits fell on our president of the board, and of course we corrected that in a separate bill, a separate local legislative bill. That one's already passed. It's on the governor's desk. This piece only addresses the board itself. It does not address the president, and I think that's the one you were thinking about.
So why is it going? Did something happen, and then I'm just trying to understand why it went from 2 to 4, and then it sunsetted, so possibly it could go back to 2. So is there a policy reason, or is there just something going on locally?
We've got some local problems.
Okay, that's all.
Okay. 16. That is Representative Kaiser. She waves. All right, I see no more lights. Is there, now I'm going to be very, very tough on this because this bill is one item I said I would give comments. Is anyone in the audience, you have 30 seconds that would like to say anything. So please stand, identify yourself, and make your comment. Just the first portion right now. Just this portion, nothing else. None of just this portion. Anyone else want to comment on the 4-year term? Yes, sir. Identify yourself. All right. Anyone else? You have 30 seconds. Yes. Identify yourself. Any other comments? Angela, I'd like to ask you a question. Is it correct? And I know I believe them, but that is correct. All systems but one have 4-year terms. Is that correct? Okay, that is correct. Okay. Anyone else have a comment? If not, I will go to the next. Thank you so much. We're going to look at the whole bill, so we'll go to number 2, Representative Miller. All right, keep your comments to yourself.
10 years I'll be Representative Miller. At least you didn't call me
I want you to
Frank.
I want you to remember how nice you're being treated. I'll be with you in a few minutes.
Yes, you will. Yes, you will. In about 10 minutes, I believe. First of all, Section 2, which is lines 39 to 54. This was originally Senator Emanuel Jones's bill. It is now Representative Mike Jacobs' bill. So I am Mike Jacobs because I think he's in Judiciary presenting about 5 bills. If you all remember, last year we passed SB 84. And where we did school board governance. And in that particular bill, based upon statements by the Chamber of Commerce, based upon parents, based upon everything, we came up in this state with a very simple philosophy. The school board should have no more than 7 members. That was the decision we reached last year as a body. At the present time, DeKalb County has 9 members. Okay. All this legislation does is reduce us down to 7 single-member districts. I would say to you the local school board came out with a resolution against it recently. I don't know if we could get this through the House delegation from DeKalb County as well. But the bottom line is I live in a county, and who's in favor of this? The parents have lived through the last year of whether or not their school system could possibly lose accreditation. And Saxon, I know, is in favor of reduced size of the school board. And, if it was good enough for the rest of the state, then it should be good enough for DeKalb County. So that's the reason why it's reducing the size of the board from 9 to 7 in single-member districts. And that's the essence of this section from line 39 to 54.
You accept questions? I think you have a lot. All right, number
Sure.
8,
Best
that's
I
Representative
can.
Maxwell.
I wish I could tell you the answer on that, Mr. Chairman, but I'm not sure why it was done that way. But I think that's pretty commonplace what he's got here, is what I understand. But now I don't care if we do an amendment on it. That's fine too. I think this may be how we do it now. But is anybody? This may be how they do it right now, I believe. But I'm not sure. No, what it is, the whole key here is the word such. Everything goes back to DeKalb County in this particular legislation because we're the only one with more than 7. There's only 2 counties, if you go back to the beginning, which have a homestead option, sales tax.
Listen to this.
And a county sales and use tax. There's only 2 counties, DeKalb and Rockdale. But we are the only one that have more than 7 members. Rockdale doesn't. So all of this would just apply to DeKalb. That's correct. And I run this, Angela.
Is that correct, Angela?
Me as well.
I see it. All right, the next question is number 13, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I will probably have comments or questions in section 3 as well. Just 1 or 2. But just my overall thought on this bill, I mean, this is like a Christmas tree bill for local legislation. I'm dealing with Savannah that I know nothing about,
Right.
DeKalb that I know nothing about, and the second I'm going to deal with Atlanta that
But
I
you
know
know
a little
something
bit
about.
about. Thank you, Madam Chair. It just, I hate to, just as a policy matter, deal with local legislation through a general process. I think we've got a process for local legislation, and if for some reason it can't get through a local delegation, then you either got to elect new people or get new delegation rules. I mean, I just, as a practice, don't like to deal with local legislation through a general process because it, you know, I don't like to get in local delegations politics is one of the reasons.
That's you. Your wife's calling you saying, that's DeKalb County's chairman calling you.
That's Kasim Reed calling you, but go ahead. Not that he would want to be involved in any school situation.
Saying you're messing around, man.
He wouldn't want to be involved in any school. He doesn't want to talk about education, David. Would you like me to respond, or is that a statement?
Yeah, it was a statement, but I do have a question, and it kind of follows with Representative Maxwell about so if a school system does not have a provision that says so they have to have a provision that, well, let me ask this. Are there any school systems that elect their chairperson countywide or district-wide as opposed to among their membership?
That's correct. Yeah. They do.
And they would have to have a provision in their local law that provides for that. If they don't, they would move to this?
No.
This only
applies to the
only
county.
applies to DeKalb. And again, the reason we have at the present time, we have 2 at-large members, and we think we'll be better served with just the 7. If we're going to eliminate 2, we're eliminating the at-large, basically, is what we're doing, and redrawing lines, which we'll do in August. You know, back to your question on the local matters. You know, we just had a lawsuit filed this past week against a bunch of cities we created the last 2 and 5 years. Those cities would not have been created if it was done by local legislation. And I would say the same thing here, except the difference here is I live in a county that is living under the threat of loss of accreditation. Okay? Saks has been in. They are the ones that also feel that a board member size of 7 is good. We in this state made this decision last year, not Fran Miller, not you, but as a body, we said 7's the ideal number. That's all this does. It takes us to 7.
Representative Thomas?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess my comment really echoes others. This really sounds like a DeKalb local legislation piece of legislation that DeKalb County legislators wouldn't agree to.
In the House. That's correct.
In the House.
In the House. It was agreed to in the Senate. It was passed in the Senate. Chairman Anil Jones, and we had the necessary signatures to send it over here. And I think it's sitting probably in the delegation at this point.
All right. Another question? That it? Representative Thomas? That it? Okay. Representative Mayo, and then I have one down here.
You could probably answer that question better than I can.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It is in the delegation. We have been made aware of the bill, and I don't think there's enough support in the DeKalb House delegation to pass this bill. So it's been made part of this general legislation. And I just wanted to point out an inconsistency here. We've got the folks from Chatham County who stood up and shared with us that they passed a unanimous resolution supporting part of this bill. And then on the other hand, we've got DeKalb County where our locally elected officials have opposed this unanimously. So we've got some inconsistencies here, committee. Are we going, and when we consider local elected officials as being a local governing body and respecting local rule, where are we on this? Because in Chatham, we've got the school folks saying they're for their section of the bill, and in DeKalb, we have a resolution opposing it.
Can I respond to that?
Sure.
There's a difference, too, between Chatham and DeKalb County. Chatham County is not facing the threat of loss of accreditation. We are.
And if I can respond, I think that's a Saks issue. I think Saks has given our county a list of criteria to follow, and I think we ought to allow them the opportunity to get in line and make good with those things. And I don't think they have said anywhere that we are close to losing accreditation.
You know, the only thing I would say, going back to the fact that we in this state made a decision last year, the ideal board size is 7 people. That's all this does. Some people don't like to lose their positions. And they're going to find out about that this upcoming August also.
Okay. Representative Benton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Not you, Alicia.
Representative Miller, if this is passed, do you think there's going to be any problem with getting Department of Justice approval on this piece of legislation?
I don't think so.
In other words, you're cutting down from 9. You don't think anybody going feel
We're eliminating the
disfranchised?
at-large. We're going to have districts be the same, similar size as what they'll have to be. We will have to draw maps for this, just like the other maps we draw for, those have been through reapportionment for the, for our county governments, for our school systems, for us, okay, for Congress. So no, I don't think there'll be any problem with that.
Okay.
All right, well, let me come back to you. All right, Representative Setzler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just, to Senator Millar, we had a similar issue a couple of years ago about another school system facing accreditation issues.
Right.
We acted as a General Assembly, did we not, in a statewide way with a general law?
That's correct. The governor actually intervened, sent down 2 people, to help there as well as in the middle of the state. So yeah, when in a local situation, that's exactly what we did.
So from a principal perspective, some questions were raised. We seem to be having a double standard here. I want to get the principle is what I hear you saying in this bill is that if a school system faces accreditation issues and won't reform itself over time potentially, that school board perhaps is not in a position to issue a resolution asking that it be reformed, just, I think almost by definition. So what I'm hearing you say is that if a school system we believe is facing an imminent accreditation issue, it is the job of the General Assembly to be prepared to act in a statewide way to address that. Is that basically not the principle here?
That's a fair statement, but I think it's more important. We're here, what we're trying to do is be consistent throughout this state. We've said 7 members is the ideal size. That's all this is doing. It's putting us at 7. And we're eliminating at large. We'll have districts of comparable size. And from that standpoint, I agree with what you're saying, but that's not really the point with this. The bottom line is we're getting in conformance of what we in the state said was the ideal situation to operate from. No more than 7. So that's all we're doing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I won't address the 7 issue, but on Section 5, and Chairman Benton made me think about this when I read it earlier. I saw that it applied to Section 3, but is there any need for pre-clearance on Section 2 as well as it relates to DeKalb County?
Not that I'm aware of, because from a standpoint of a racial makeup in our county, our county is probably approximately 30% Caucasian, probably 60-some% African American. I don't envision this is going to be changed any way, shape, or form from that. Right now,
so the 2 at-large members are African American or not?
One is African American, and one is Caucasian at the present time.
And you'd be eliminating those seats essentially.
Yes, and then about redrawing the map, we'll have 7 total members.
And there would need to be no Justice Department sign off on that?
I think they're going to sign up on any redistricting, yes.
But
that doesn't mean we're in violation of any voter's right.
But this section that would essentially eliminate 2 seats.
2 at large.
Right. Well, you say at large. This doesn't say at large. The at large is what you'll do locally, is what you're saying.
No, this says single member districts.
Oh, it says single members. Okay. So you would eliminate 2 at large positions.
There are 2 at large, and those are what we'd be eliminating.
One of them is African American.
Yes.
And there's no need for Justice Department pre-clearance on this language.
I don't think so. Okay. In fact, I got Representative Jacobs.
Betsy would like to comment. Betsy?
That may need to be pre-cleared by the Justice Department. It's likely the AG is obviously in the whole bill anyway, but that would, under the local law that redistricts, would definitely have to happen.
That would be, yes, for sure.
But this part might as well, and I think that's actually a good point. If these, combined bills and they didn't originally have that, I think might be able to have that.
And let's say, would they find, so if they look at this, would they look at it section by section? Section 2 is okay, Section 3 may have issues, or vice versa?
There's severability on it, yes.
There is severability on it? Okay.
There's severability on it.
Okay.
I'm not going to mess up Chatham County or City of Atlanta.
All right, Representative Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, it's been suggested a couple times that this has some tie-in with potential accreditation issues for DeKalb County. Is changing the number of board members from 9 to 7 going to address all of the concerns that were expressed about potential accreditation issues for DeKalb County?
Representative, I don't think that any one thing is going to be the basis for accreditation. I mean, they have 8 or 9 points there. Our biggest problem is the fact that they want our members to get along, quit micromanaging, and stop meddling, and you go from there accordingly. So, again, I go back to the primary reason for this bill is we as a state said, ideally we should have no more than 7 board members anywhere. We have 9. We're getting in compliance with that. Do I believe that will help us from an accreditation standpoint? Yes. Anything we do right now to look like we're being compliant and doing what we're told is going to help us. So, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. That's the intent of the bill. That's why Senator Jones brought the bill. Fran Miller didn't bring the bill. Senator Jones brought the bill. And as you spoke about earlier, the fact from a standpoint of clearance things, he's an African American. Not Fran Miller didn't bring the bill. So we all signed off it in the Senate. We think it's a good idea, like the rest of the state. That's why you're looking at the bill in this format as drafted by Representative Jacobs.
Well, but in the absence of these concerns about accreditation, would this bill be moving forward?
I think so.
Just to make everybody have 7 because it's so important that we're all at 7?
Well, we sort of felt last year it was important enough to pass a statewide bill that the ideal size is no more than 7.
Well, that's the ideal sice. Doesn't mean it fits everything, right? I mean, isn't that kind of the way
I
that
guess
works?
we can debate that. That was the ideal maximum size.
I mean,
7.
Gwinnett County, for example, we have 5.
Yes, you did.
So that's not ideal. Should we be at 7 then?
Nope.
All right.
Based upon your results, you can do anything you want at this point, I think.
Right.
But not 9.
But not 9.
All right, Representative Dudgeon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just comment very briefly on board size. I think that tons of studies have been done nationwide and so forth. The effective boards are 5 and 7 people. 9 members gets too political, too many things going on. You're trying to build consensus and work towards a common mission. And the more people you have, think about how hard it is to get a consensus around this place. The more people you have, the harder it is to work on the core mission of the school board. So I wholeheartedly support any moves towards getting rid of 9-member boards.
Okay. All right, I see no more questions. So what I want to do, 30 seconds. Anybody in the, and I'm going to come to you. You want to talk about, let's finish this one. I'm coming to you. Can you wait just a second? Because I don't want to confuse the issue. You're talking about Section 1, aren't you, Representative? So let me finish this one and come right back to you. All right, anyone want to make a comment in the audience, stand up and give your name, all right? You say there's 6 members, right, of the delegation? How many members of the DeKalb delegation? How many?
17.
17, okay. All right. Anyone else want to speak? Stand up.
Why don't you let Representative, you want to say something, Representative Jacobs?
Anyone else have a question? Yeah, comment, raise your hand. Did you want to, anyone else in the audience want to have a comment? All right, Representative Jacobs, we'll give you a chance to make a comment because I know this was part of yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I authored Section 1. It is part of a House bill that never quite moved forward. But basically, I'm just here to echo Senator Miller's sentiments. We're both on the same page on this one. And with regard to the question of whether less is better, I have to say Sachs believes and has said publicly that smaller school boards are better school boards. All of the educational commentary on this subject that I have read, and I've looked at it extensively, says that smaller school boards function better. There are fewer agendas on smaller school boards, and ultimately the focus of these school boards is to be what is best for the kids in that school district. So the fewer agendas, the better. The more big picture these school boards are, the better. And all of the experts tend to agree that smaller school boards function better. So that's, and I think anything that gets us to that in any school district is necessarily a healthy thing. And that's it, Mr. Chairman.
Well, you've lit up the birthday cake is here again, so we're going to take these and move on. So, number 4, Representative Morgan, one question apiece.
Okay, I was going to say I have 2, but I'll get to one. Again, it's a similar question to the first issue that we had to deal with. Because this is a local issue that we are now being brought into, I need to understand some more of the dynamics, and this is a real question. Why do the House members in DeKalb oppose this bill? Are there other pieces of this that we are missing? And I have to say, as a follow-up to that one question, legally, if the law says that boards have to have 7 members, would that not make DeKalb out of compliance with having 9?
No,
or is
no.
it for future boards?
No, because the old ones were grandfathered in.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the first part of my question?
The first part of your question, I can't speak for all of the various House members. I mean, what I know is that there are 2 local bills out there, one carried by Mary Margaret Oliver on the House side, the other by Senator Emanuel Jones on the Senate side. I believe the Senate bill has crossed over to the House. The House bill is having trouble getting over to the Senate, and that is where it lies. But I cannot purport to speak for 7 senators and 19 House members representing DeKalb County. So.
Okay. All right, Representative Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Jacobs, it seems to me that to have a wider perspective, a district-wide perspective on education, that to go from district-wide elected members to singular district elected members makes people have a smaller perspective, that they're just trying to protect the schools in their district or the programs in their district, as opposed to seeing the entire school board. And so having members who are elected citywide or countywide in your case, and those who are elected from individual districts gives a good balance to a school board. And so to take away that citywide or countywide perspective, to me seems like you're going to make it even more partisan and more personal. It's almost, to me, like you would be going in the wrong direction. Just because you have fewer people making comments doesn't mean that those 7 will get along any better than 9 people will get along. And so I just, for that and other reasons, I can't support this.
Okay. Representative, have 2 more comments. I'm going to take Representative Setzler.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to the House sponsor, right, the question was raised, the
Right.
notion that we have panels of larger than 7. We have legislative bodies that are much larger. Isn't it true, though, that a school board is not a legislature, but a school board sort of concentrates what's analogous to legislative and executive authority in a group of people that have to work together and promulgate policy in a way that's not a legislature, and it's like much like city councils and county commissions, that number, like school boards, where that power is concentrated with one body. Isn't that really the basis that an unwieldy number really becomes unworkable?
It is unlike a legislature or they set policy, okay, that's true, but it is unlike a legislature or a legislative body. They're intended to be a collaborative body, okay? The more members there are, the less collaborative it becomes, and that, I think, is the issue that Sachs and all of the experts have with larger school boards.
All right, Representative Dudgeon, last question.
Pretty much covered. I just want to clarify my remarks about school board size. Exactly right. The school board has a very different mission than the legislature, and in order to receive a consensus, that's what you have to do. So I'm just following up on what was just said.
Thank you, Representative.
All right, that's it for this one. I've had everybody's given an opportunity. I want to let Representative, let's see, where's Mickey? You want to say something about Section 1. Mickey wants to speak about Section 1. And then we'll go. So flip yourself back. Then Representative Representative Lindsay, you're next, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In Section 1 in SB 78, am I correct? 79,
That's the one, right.
79. There's this part of the 4 years, all board members should be elected for 4-year terms, is a bill that's just crafted for one county only, and that's Chatham County. We met with Chairman Stevens on Monday, and the delegation came to consensus on straightening this out. I think it's a local matter. I don't think it's a general bill, and it shouldn't be on the general calendar. I think that since we worked it out as a delegation, and Senator Carter has some objections, that I think it's something that could be worked out locally, and I think that your vote on this should be in the negative. And I'll be glad to answer any question. I wrote the original bill for Chatham County because we have a school district that, as of even as late as Saturday, we found out Saturday's paper. We found out that we had a high school that had to be reconstituted. This is the second high school within 6 months. We have one more high school that's going to be probably going to have to be reconstituted probably at the end of the year. It's because we have a board of education that does not come under scrutiny. They sit there 4 years at a time, does not come under scrutiny. So I passed legislation to make them run every 2 years, so they could be evaluated every 2 years. We have a school system that's broke, and it's being run. It's an urban district, but it's being run like a suburban school district, and it's not working. We have 30,000 kids in our district, and we're losing a vast lot. We have a $30 million high school sitting on the east side right now with 700 kids in it. 700 kids. That's a shame. That's a shame for anybody to even defend that. It's a shame. To think that we've lost 2 high schools already, and about to lose a 3rd one. I ran for the school board because we had an elementary school in my district that never made AYP. Never made AYP until I got on the school board. And we had to reconstitute the elementary school. And this is all it is a smoke screen for a general bill that shouldn't be. This is a local situation, and we drafted the bill. Chairman Stevens drafted the bill that will restore 4-year terms back to the board president, and restore 4-year terms back to board members with term limits. And the term limits would sunset in 8 years if the school system is straightened out by the school board. It's just that simple. We just have a school system that's not working. And I would hate to think that we use a general bill to punish the kids of Chatham County, period. Because I think that I stand under scrutiny every 2 years. If I don't do my job, send me home. Send me home. And I think that applies to each one of us in here. Again, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for your consideration, and I ask for your negative vote on this.
Thank you. Stick around if you would. We'll be coming back. All right. Let's go to the third part now. There's no questions. That's not cutting you off. There's no one's asked, but you stick around. We'd debate. So now, if we could, we'd have the third part. So, Representative Lindsay, if you'd come forward and talk about who's going to work with you, Representative Ash, okay?
Representative Ash.
You'll walk down, okay?
Representative Ash is my tag team. Yeah. The committee will recall that we worked on very extensively for a 2-year period SB 84 and passed SB 84 to set out a clear policy statement that if school boards are not doing their job and find themselves on probation, that they should be subject to greater scrutiny by the state in terms of having the state school board review that school system that's under probation, and determine and make recommendations to the governor as to whether or not they are to be removed, and have interim board members put in their place, and then of course allow for those school board members to petition to be placed back on the board as based on the evidence of that particular case. We did, however, in SB 84 that we passed last year, apply it only to those school board members elected after July 1st, 2010. What Section 3 will simply do is apply that same public policy principle that we passed last year to all school board members, regardless of whether or not they were elected prior to July 1st, 2010 or after July 1st, 2010. That will have an impact, could have a potential impact on school systems that may face future probation. It will also have a possible impact on the Atlanta public school system. The applicable date in here is July 1st, 2011. We believe that this will be a positive effect on the already ongoing process the Atlanta public school system and its board are going through in order to be reaccredited, or rather to maintain its accreditation. What we're simply doing here, Mr. Chairman, is applying a safety net to provide comfort to the students and parents and teachers of the Atlanta public school system that come the end of this investigatory period at the end of September, one way or the other, we're going to have an accredited school system within the city of Atlanta. That is something that I believe is paramount for us to do here as a General Assembly is to provide that level of comfort needed for those folks who are sending their children to school and for those students themselves. That's essentially what Section 3 does, Mr. Chairman. I'll allow Representative Ash to add anything.
I think all of us who are members of the Atlanta delegation are convinced that the Atlanta School Board is going to do what needs to be done. But this provision provides that safety net so that a student who is going into the 11th or 12th grade next year, he and his or her parents will have the assurance that one way or another, folks are going to be able to maintain that accreditation. It's such an important part of not only that student's life, but also the economic life of a city, and therefore the economic life of the state. This is a safety net. I have every hope, just as when I voted for 84 last year, that this provision will never, ever, ever have to take effect. But if we get in a place where we need it badly, and we need it quickly, and we need a plan, a safety net.
Over the course of the last few months, since January, since the Atlanta school system was placed on probation and its board, I have attended, I believe, PTAs in every school in my area. And the parents are all scared. And what the parents ask two questions. What can we all do to help make sure that the board does what it needs to do to maintain our accreditation? And we went through that. And number two, the second question was, if they fail, Edward, what are you going to do? And what is the state going to do to make sure that our students, our Georgia students, not just Atlanta students, but our Georgia students still have the accreditation that they need in order to advance? And I believe that this bill provides that level of extra insurance that our parents and students in particular, who are still very fearful, provides them with a certain level of assurance that I think is absolutely necessary here.
Okay, we have some questions, so if y'all both will stay there. Starting with Representative Dixon.
Well, it's crafted to include Atlanta, but would also apply to any other school system that faced accreditation probation in the future as well. It would be applicable in the future because basically it deals with any school system that is either going forward from that point forward, that is under probation as of that date or in the future. It doesn't mean it has to happen at that moment. Let me also add that. But you know, the key thing that we're trying to do here, number one, we're giving the school system further time to provide evidence that they're moving in the right direction. We wanted to do that rather than try to impose it immediately. Number two is it does allow for July 1st is 3 months away from the closeout date. It does allow for the state to monitor the situation and to make the necessary adjustments in July that they feel is necessary, so that we, by the deadlines set forth by SACS at the end of September, that we have an accredited school system. It gives the state school board and the governor enough time period to make whatever corrective actions are necessary to maintain accreditation. No, well, if they're already under probation, based on the already existing law, we already passed an SB 84. You're right. Well, that was a public policy that we already did. We did that last year.
Okay. Representative Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Whip, can you tell me how many school systems are currently on probation in Georgia?
At the present time, it's Atlanta school system.
Is that the only one?
At the present time, yes. But there are other ones also under investigation.
Okay, because I thought that there were
I may be wrong. Is there another
5
one?
others.
Are there others?
No. I mean, there are others under investigation, but only Atlanta school system is.
Appling isn't on probation?
Appling's not.
Randolph County? Warren?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yes, I gave you permission.
What about Coffee County? Can you, on line 74,
Yes, sir.
if you turn with me to 74,
Yeah.
Where it says retain full accreditation.
Yes.
Warren County is on the path back to full accreditation, I assume. Do they have full accreditation? And would this language affect counties like DeKalb that are in a warning status, I guess? Is it just probation? Is that what full accreditation means?
Yes.
So no warning status. So DeKalb County will fall under this because they're in a warning status.
Fall underneath this, no, sir.
Okay. What about? So tell me what full accreditation means then.
It means that we're not on probation, essentially. That.
And probation is the only other status that this would apply to.
Okay.
Then
one more.
one.
Go take. No, you can have another question. Go ahead.
On this round, is that?
No, you can take it right now. Go ahead.
Well, before I ask my question, let me just say this since I only have one opportunity. Is that for this to be a safety net? Well, from all objective accounts, I think people would agree that the Atlanta Public Schools, the school board in particular, is making some progress to address the recommendations by SACS.
I think that's a fair statement, and one in which I have made more than once publicly.
I would agree.
That they are making progress. However, another fair assessment is that there is a lot of heavy lifting that has to take place between now and July 1st, that we need to continue to see that progress in order to provide the assurances needed to the students.
Absolutely. So let me, because it's Mr. Chairman, just another clarification question. With the new board members who are appointed, temporary replacements, board members who are removed will continue to be paid for their service. Would the new board members also continue to be paid? And if so, is the local system required to pay those salaries, or what is the situation with the compensation?
I believe that underneath the existing law that the new board member would be paid as well.
And the local system would fit the bill with that. And then my final question, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
This is an important issue
Go
for
ahead.
constituents.
But like I said, I think the primary focus needs to be on the students and not on the poor board members.
I would not. I cannot agree with you more, and that's why I was shocked that SACS's probation of Atlanta had more to do with school board personalities than it did with education in the classroom. But my final question, Mr. Whip, if you'll indulge me. So essentially, at some point, the SACS recommendations are due in September. We would hope we would get some report back in October. Let's say that the governor and the State Board of Education make some determination at some point after July 1st, but before September, that the school system is not moving in the right direction toward accreditation. And he replaces all or one school board member. This one says whether to suspend all board members. So I'm not sure if he would have the option of suspending one or two members or every member of the board based on this language. And the fact that I'm just saying this and I haven't had an opportunity to read it thoroughly.
It says all.
It says all. So
It
he
says
would
all.
remove
As
every
does,
single.
As does SB 84.
I remember
Policy
84.
that we already passed.
So he would remove every school board member, So we're now, let's say we're in August.
We don't want to get in there, and I think that's important, actually, point to make, if I may, because we're not sitting here trying to pick winners and losers among various factions of the school board. What we're trying to do is make sure that we have in place a body that is able to govern and is able to provide full accreditation to its school system so that the students are protected. I don't want to see a situation where someone comes in and says, okay, I don't like you, I like you, I don't like you. We don't want that.
I'm following. Yeah. Just follow me because I want to get back to
this. Is your last question.
I'm sorry, Mr.
No, go ahead. I told you one more and you've had three. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Last question. Let's go. Make it.
Train of thought.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
No,
so
take your last
I want to
question.
walk with you with the timeline real quickly. After July, makes a determination that the entire board needs to leave. We're in the process of hiring another superintendent that's already started.
Yes.
He removes every single school board member who's been involved in this process. It's not a process that's going to stop because of SACS. It's ongoing, and it's in SACS's recommendations. We have 9 completely new school board members who are now charged with, among other things, maintaining accreditation, getting back accreditation, and selecting a superintendent, all of whom have never been elected by the citizens of Atlanta. So you would have an appointed body selecting the person who will lead this school system for maybe a decade. And that, to me, is problematic.
Well, let me address that, and I appreciate that. But number one, this is not mandatory. The governor does not have to remove the school board member. Number two, we're dealing with a situation where the school board has failed in its duties, flat out. Failed in its duties based on a determination from the governor, and has led the school system to a point that it endangers the education of the students. It is a difficult step. It is a step that I fully accept that the governor will take prudently. Does not necessarily require that he do so, but it does, like I said, going back to the focus on the student rather than focus on the school board. I do believe that it provides the necessary sense of security that the students of my city and their parents and the teachers need at the present moment.
Okay, question from, in the order the lights came on, 4, Representative Morgan. And you can come back.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have several questions,
okay,
but I do want to say, Mr. Chair, that I wish that the folks from Atlanta Public Schools would have the ability to ask as many questions as they need. I mean,
well,
this is a...
Let me also...
Well, I'm going to let him come back. I just want to be sure about his chance.
I would like to address that. I did spend about an hour and a half with my members of the Atlanta delegation
earlier
this morning. So these questions between myself and Mr. Taylor are not new.
I don't have a problem with that. As a member of this committee who has to vote on this Christmas tree of a bill that has all to do with districts that I don't live in, don't pay taxes in, don't vote for the people who should be making these decisions, I'm really concerned. And this Atlanta one in particular, which I happen to know a little bit more about than the rest of them, I'm really concerned. And I think the questions that Representative Taylor has asked are very valuable questions. And whether y'all had the discussion before or not is not very relevant for me, because as a member of this committee, this is the first time I'm looking at. Nobody talked to me this
Representative
morning.
Morgan, I gave him 2 questions. I told him I would come back. I will let him ask as many questions as he wants. Ask your question.
And I'm more than happy to answer your question, Representative Morgan.
Ask your question, Representative Morgan.
So I'm going to calmly ask my questions.
I'm calm too.
But this is getting out of hand.
No, it's not. You're getting out of hand.
I'm more than happy to
No, I haven't gotten out of hand yet, and I'm
Representative
going to try
Morgan,
not to.
Representative Morgan, I am not either. You ask your question. That's what you, I
So
didn't
my
ask you for
questions
comment.
are this, Mr. Chair, and to the authors of
I'm
this
more than happy to answer.
Amendment, I guess this is called, or substitute. I'm trying to understand, when we dealt with SB 84, we were talking about districts who, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, when we're talking about removing members, these were districts that had already lost accreditation. Is that not the case?
No.
Tell me what we did in SB 84.
SB 84 dealt with systems that would in the future be faced with loss of accreditation and would allow and had been in fact placed on probation and would allow the governor to then, and the state school board, and then the governor to come in and assess the situation to see whether or not the school board can adequately address the problems of accreditation and work with SACS on whether or not a replacement board needed to be put into place. That's what SB 84 did.
So what cannot be done now in Atlanta Public Schools that we need this
Problem
bill?
is that we had in the SB 84 a date that only applies to school board members elected after July 1st, 2010. It doesn't apply to folks elected prior to July 1st, 2010.
Okay.
At its core, the only public policy that we're changing here is applying it to all school board members rather than simply those for July 1st, 2010.
Great. So my second question, what circumstances would a governor be looking at to suspend all of the board members? Is there a process that the State Board of Education between now and it have to be before July 1st because that decision
No,
would have to be
after July
done by
1st.
then.
Yeah.
So what is the process? Is there someone from the department who could highlight for me what would need to be the extenuating circumstances to determine that this recommendation needs to happen and the governor would then move forward?
Well, first off, to correct you, it applies after July 1st. So the school board is called upon, depending on the situation as of July 1st, to then do an investigation and call for a hearing in not less than 10 or more than 30 days after that date. So it doesn't mean they start beforehand. Number two, the factor, and we went through this last year if you recall, the ultimate factor for the state school board to consider, based on the testimony last year, and I expect the public policy to continue, is whether or not that school board can function in the way necessary to work its way through the probationary period and come out with full accreditation. That's the ultimate factor to be considered. The details will be dependent upon the circumstances in each and every situation.
So there are not going to be a set of standards that will be used across the board for every district to determine what circumstances warrants this action?
No, I think I just finished telling you what the standard is. The standard is whether or not the school board, based on the investigation by the state school board and its recommendation to the governor, is able to work its way through the probationary process and continue full accreditation. That's the standard. Now,
so what role does
hold on,
SACS play in that?
The details in that will be dependent upon each situation.
What role does SACS play in that? Isn't that a part of what they do when they put a district on probation? They make recommendations, and in this case, since we're really talking about Atlanta Public Schools, there seems to be a sentiment that, including the two of you who have said, that the board is working through its issues.
And the board is working through its issues, and the standard would be set on line 61 and 62, because this doesn't happen for the pending loss of accreditation for any reason other than school board governance-related reasons by one or more of the accrediting agencies. So for a state board to move, to encourage a governor to move, it would take clear evidence that that school board is not moving effectively to address the school board governance-related issues that are necessary to maintain full accreditation.
I have one final question.
This will be your third one. Okay, go ahead.
There were several statements made that this is in the best interest of children and, it's going to give parents some comfort. So my question is, if one could agree that perhaps Atlanta Public Schools could be on probation because of the cheating and all of the scandal around that, would this not also be appropriate for the superintendent and other people who have actually directly impacted student learning?
Keep in mind that that's a different issue. This doesn't deal with the school boards, and we are also in the process of replacing our existing superintendent with a new superintendent as effective this summer.
Okay, I have many more questions. Everybody will have a chance to go around. I'm going to tell you, I don't care if the discussion goes all night. We'll stay here, but I'm going to give everybody a chance to ask all the questions they want, so don't anybody think, and I don't mean to be tough, but I tell you, we want everybody to have their turn. So number 5, Mr. Representative Teasley.
I just had a quick question. Many of the questions I'd had before, Representative Taylor had asked, but the question I have under the very unfortunate circumstance, the governor does have to act. When would we have duly elected board members? Let's say that the governor has to choose to replace with temporary members. Is there any provision as to when elections would be held?
Okay?
Unless they petition to be reinstated, which they are permitted to underneath the law.
Thank you.
All right. Number 7.
Thanks,
Rex
Mr.
Thomas.
Chairman. I'm worried you're going to get testy with me
No, I
as
don't
you have
get
with my
testy.
other
You
caucus
have-
members, so I'm going to waive so that there's more time for them to ask some
No,
more
you go ahead
questions.
and ask your question. We might print out. Ask your question.
I prefer to defer. Thank you, Mr.
All
Chairman.
right. Representative Jones?
Everyone take a breath. I'm here as long as you need me, okay? That's the most important thing you need to understand.
Say what?
I'm here as long as the chairman.
That's right. We're going to stay here and we're going to get it done. I want to say one thing. I want to give everybody a chance to ask a question. You can have 1 or 2 at a time. I'll let you ask 20 if you want to. This is important, and we're going to spend the time we need. So flash your lights. You keep going, all right? How about 20 lights up here, so have a good time, all right? Representative Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Everything we're talking about here is it true that it's essentially in current law, and we
Yes.
already approved this fairly overwhelmingly last year
Yes.
in the House and in the Senate, and that substantively the only real change is whether this will apply to only new board members who are elected or current school board members, which is what this bill would change and allow current. And I assume that it's your thinking that from a policy standpoint, if you agree with the premise that under very narrow and sort of emergency circumstances that a governor should be able to remove school board members, that it's your contention that what's the real policy difference between a new board member and a current board member if the school system is under the threat of losing accreditation?
There is no policy difference.
And I was trying to recall the timeline when we overwhelmingly passed this policy last year, and as I recall, it really had been introduced the previous year, and that I believe the Clayton County school board members were reelected last year in the general election, and the intent was, because they were all up for reelection, it would have applied to all of them very shortly anyway.
Yes.
The problem we find ourselves, and I don't think this is just an Atlanta school system issue, we have these issues throughout the state that if you believe that under narrow circumstances that a governor elected statewide should be able to intervene, then that there should be no distinction between whether you're going to be reelected in 2 years, 3 years, or 3 years ago. And that's all we're changing.
That's all this is about. There is no logical difference. It's either good public policy or it's not.
All right, Representative Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This will be the end, but there is a significant difference. I remember the discussion around 84. I think I worked with the majority whip and the new chairman of the Education Committee on a couple of concerns I had, which were rooted in people who were duly elected to office being removed from office by other elected officials, or a state board of education, which is non-elected. That was my concern. The compromise is you change the date to July 1st, 2010, so that if you're elected after that date, you know what you're getting into. But if I'm elected before that date, you're completely changing the rules in the middle of the game. I was elected under one premise, and now the General Assembly is doing retroactive legislation for one city, essentially, that will now have a statewide impact. If I were elected and this law wasn't in effect, and now you change the law and can remove me, and I've been duly elected by the people of my district, I think it's completely unfair. For me, and this is a fundamental, I'll be done in a minute.
That's fine.
For me, it's a fundamental concern that if someone who has been duly elected by the people to serve are going to be removed from office, if they're going to be removed from office, it ought to be something criminal. You ought to be going to jail. Anything short of that, there are mechanisms in place to get rid of people you don't like. There are recall petitions. You could change the lines like some counties are doing. But to have someone who has been elected by the people to represent them on the school board, now you would have a case where they're being removed by someone that they may not even have voted for.
Isn't that true?
For me, is problematic. That's my fundamental concern that I had with 84.
Can I address that?
One second, because I don't want to lose my train of thought.
All right.
The second thing is that, you know, SACS does not accredit our school system.
Wait a minute. Can I address that question
you
first?
can.
And I don't mean to cut you off, but that you raised an interesting point, and that's an important point I think needs to be addressed, and I don't want to lose it before I address your next question. I'm more than happy, once again, Mr. Chairman, to stand and address all of his questions. One thing I fundamentally disagree with you. I think the standard ought to be much higher, particularly for school board members, than you can't be removed unless you've done something criminal. I think that if you are conducting yourself in such a fashion, or the board has conducted itself in such a fashion, that it jeopardizes the education or the educational opportunities of the school, of the students. That to me is.
Who makes that determination?
Well, we've already put accreditation in there as a public policy already, Mr. Taylor. That's number one. Number two, regarding whether or not the rules are changed. I don't think the rules are changed here. The fact of the matter is, if you're not doing your job and you've jeopardized those students, that's something that's fundamental to your job. And I would cite to you, there is a specific case law that has, in fact, dealt with this issue in the past. There's one called Smith versus Abercrombie, and I won't play too much lawyer with you. But basically, in that case, the rules were changed after the person was elected in terms of how they could properly be removed from office. The person objected. And that person had already been elected prior to the enactment of the law. After this other bill went into effect, he was removed by this new method. He objected, took the case all the way, I believe, to the Georgia Supreme Court. The Georgia Supreme Court found that there is no vested interest in a public position. It is a trust that person has, but there is no vested right in it. And therefore, it found that, in fact, you could alter the methods by which someone could be removed after they had been elected and apply that to that person. So I believe that underneath well-founded case law existing in Georgia already, we're on very firm ground. That was your first question, and I'll be more than happy to address the second.
Thank you. And we can talk later about this case. I'd love to know the circumstances around it, who was removed, what caused them to be removed, what office it was. But my second point, and then I'll close with this, Mr. Chairman, is that SACS does not accredit all of our schools in Atlanta. It's not our entire system. It's just the high schools. And in fact, they don't accredit the high schools in a blanket way. It's individual. The SACS, they accredit our high schools, and it's dependent on the high school. It's not dependent on if our school board members are getting along. And so, you know, this whole thing, I mean, I'll just go back to my fundamental point, that people who have been duly elected to office, and for some people, you know, maybe a position of public trust is not that important. But when the people put their trust in someone, then they ought to be able to serve the people who put them in that position. I would suggest to you that there are members of the Atlanta School Board, if APS lost their accreditation today, would get reelected. Because the people they represent believe that they are down there fighting a good fight. They believe that they are down there doing what's in the best interest of their kids in those districts. That position may vary depending on what part of the city you're in. But I can tell you that I have met people, I've been involved in this issue for a long time, who believe that the 4 and the 5 are doing the right thing. And so for me, if the people are satisfied, and there are ways to get elected officials out of office, there's a public process for that, through, you know, recalls and petitions and all that. You know, for me, that's where we need to go. And I'll just go back to, if it's not worthy of going to jail over, you shouldn't be removed from office. There's stuff we do down here every day.
On that point, we fundamentally disagree. And obviously you disagree with the fundamental principles behind and the public policies set forth by SB 84 originally. And I can appreciate that. I view things differently. Hold on. This is my time. My time. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I don't mean to. But my turn.
You're the majority whip.
We fundamentally disagree. I believe that the standard should be the best interest of the children, best interest of the students. And that's what we're trying to do here today, is try to deal with that issue in terms of applying the public policy that we've already passed overwhelmingly in 2010 and applying it to all school systems and all school boards, regardless of when you're elected. That's the only thing we really changed here today.
Well, Representative Setzler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the author, isn't it true this legislature recently passed a provision that allows members to be removed for not paying their taxes?
Yes, it did.
Now, I don't know how much the gentleman from the 54th pays in taxes to the state each year. There may be some variance among our members, but
that's none of your business.
Right. Indeed. And I wasn't going. That wasn't my question, Mr. Chairman. But would you agree that the issue of in terms of an impact on the state of a legislator paying their taxes versus a school board member creating a climate where there are functional schools for tens of thousands of kids, that there's no less of an impact of a school board member and a board collectively providing an environment for tens of thousands of kids to learn?
And within my school system, approximately 49,000 students are affected by what's taking place.
And to the gentleman's earlier question, that there are, I mean, I don't know that I would disagree that there may be school board members who, if they were culpable in a school district losing its accreditation and schools failing, that they wouldn't be reelected. I don't doubt that's not the case in some places. And if you find yourself as being a parent in that district, and you've got you've got potentially board members who are perhaps complacent, but as long as they're fighting the good fight for the constituents, failing may be acceptable. Isn't that really an argument why parents ought to have options? No, I'm not going to ask. I say that parenthetically. I know you don't want to have that question, Mr. Witt.
I would ask Representative Setzler, and I appreciated your points earlier, but I would ask that be another issue for another day.
And I asked the Chairman to strike that from the discussion.
I am interested in the 49,000 public school students who attend the Atlanta Public Schools, which is a great school system that I myself graduated from in 1977.
And
I'm trying to maintain that greatness. A long time ago.
And to the majority whip, I just wanted to ask your opinion that if in fact the General Assembly is seen fit for the removal of members for not paying taxes, there's other provisions for removal of members that I would argue there's much more at stake in the lives of tens of thousands of kids, and it's consistent not only with case law but actions within Georgia law to remove elected officials who have this kind of impact.
On that we agree.
Representative Maureen.
I have two other questions for both of you, and they're similar to the questions I asked to the other systems that came before us. What is the history of this particular bill? Is there a particular person who asked for it? Is this something that the governor wants? I just want to understand where that came from.
Good question.
And then the second question is...
Can I do the first
sure.
one, and then I look forward to your second one. The first question, the history behind this amendment. The city school system went under probation in January. I have met with various PTAs. I believe I met with all of my PTAs over the course of the last few months. I've also met with my local MPUs. And also met with my local neighborhood associations. And within the first 2 or 3 questions of each of these meetings, it's A, what can we do to make sure that full accreditation is maintained? And they really don't care about the politics behind it. All they all care about is making sure that the students continue to be in a fully accredited system. That's what I've heard time and time again. Reports I've gotten back over the last few months has been that there has been progress. It has been slow, but progress. There is, however, a lot of heavy lifting that still has to be done that we are uncertain about. I don't want to get into some of the personalities that I've heard in terms of what's going on within the inner dynamics of the school board, but generally I've heard that we are making progress, but we've still got a long way to go, and there's still an enormous amount of uncertainty. And as we went through this process, as I talked to the various folks, and then also talked with the various educators and also, quite frankly, talked with the mayor of Atlanta, talked with other local officials. I decided, along with and consulted with Representative Ash, about the best way that we could perhaps provide a safety net, given the concerns that I heard repeatedly out there that there was no such safety net in place. We looked into the law. We brought in some of our esteemed legislative counsel in terms of what we could legally do. We felt that this, among the various ideas that we heard, some of which, you know, you've heard and read in the newspapers, the various things that have been floated, we felt that this was the most conservative and prudent course of action that we could take without changing the fundamental nature of how the Atlanta school system operates. And so as a result of that, last Thursday and Friday, I started reaching out to various selected members of my Atlanta delegation and progressed through the weekend and progressed to the point that we've introduced this bill, or proposed this amendment.
So my second question was, first of all, have you spoken to any of the current board members? And how do, as legislators who represent Atlanta public schools, and knowing both of you and your value system and what you believe in, do you believe that this is going to help the current board get closer to where we want them to be?
I believe that to be the case. I believe there is not a member of this current board who doesn't want to get there. But I also believe that everybody needs to be encouraged to keep on moving. I am a huge cheerleader for what they're trying to do. I just want them to know that there is a consequence to not being successful. I want them to know that the students I am privileged to represent deserve to graduate from an accredited high school, and that it is in their hands right now to make that happen. It is in my public policy hand to do something to encourage them to say, we got to get this done, or there's a consequence. I don't know about you, but I know my children operate better when there's a consequence. I know that I operate better when there's a consequence. We're doing a whole lot better in getting things through the legislature because sine die is set. And in this case, the sine die has got to be the day that accreditation is maintained for the 49,000 students in Atlanta.
And you don't think the loss of accreditation is enough of a consequence?
I think it is a clear consequence that I don't want to get to, because it takes a long time after you've lost accreditation to get it back. And in the meantime, what happens to real estate in the city of Atlanta? What happens to business in the city of Atlanta? What happens to public confidence? What I'm trying to do, working with Representative Lindsay, is make sure that that public is aware that accreditation is critical to the city schools in Atlanta and is critical for every student all across Georgia.
All right, Representative Jones. Representative Taylor.
And this is really my last. This is the last.
I don't believe you, but go ahead.
It is. This is the last of the last. And I appreciate Representative Setzler bringing that up about legislators, but not paying your taxes is a criminal Yes, right? You're required by law to pay your taxes. If you don't, you're breaking the law, right? No.
No.
That's not.
Not necessarily.
That's
Filing a
interesting.
false tax return is a criminal offense.
Okay.
Not
But
paying your taxes is a subject to linked civil offense.
Okay. But it's.
Maybe that's something I shouldn't point out.
Well, here's my other comment and question is that this bill, maybe you have more faith in it than I do. For me, it doesn't assure that we won't lose our accreditation. If it looks like we're moving in a direction where we're going to lose the accreditation, and I just want to walk through the timeline again with you because it's after July 1. We've got to submit the report in September. They'll probably take them 2 to 4 weeks to get back to us. Part of their recommendations is, an open and transparent process on the selection of a new superintendent, regaining the public trust. If there's a completely new board in place, what guarantees do we have that we won't lose accreditation by passing this? I mean, we still may not have an open and transparent process for selecting a superintendent. We may still not have public confidence in our public school system. What in this legislation will guarantee that we won't lose our accreditation other than we just have a completely new school board?
There are no guarantees, but we have additional remedies available to us to achieve.
So this is a non-guaranteed safety net.
Hold on. To achieve, it is an additional safety net, but even safety nets can be missed. But my point being that we are providing ourselves with additional tools in the toolbox to make sure that accreditation is maintained. That is important.
Y'all will stay there. We have that's all the questions, and I maybe some more. As I said, there were 2 bills. We're going to let audiences make a comment. So if you have a comment from the audience, if you'd please stand and be moving up toward the front, so we can hear you. Up toward the front, just stand and come on into the microphone. Just be in line up there. You have about 30 seconds and make a comment. Identify yourself, who you're representing. Are you speaking for yourself or are you speaking for a group? And let us know where we'll know, okay?
Mr. Chairman, can I extend my time to at least a minute?
Well, go ahead.
Thank you so much. Gloria Tunubu, House District 60. I'm a member of Fulton County, DeKalb County, and Clayton County delegations living in the city of Atlanta. We got a notice this morning about a meeting for the delegation. It didn't say what the subject was or anything, and it was about this bill. City of Atlanta lies in Fulton and DeKalb County, which means that both Fulton County and DeKalb County delegations should have had an opportunity to look at this bill and discuss this issue. That did not happen. The second thing is there is some thinking that SACS, a private entity that answers to no one, which is very different from other regional authorities. SACS just started this governance thing back in 2004 when it approved its first district, which was Fulton County, is very different from the other regional authorities. And all of this talk about proven research that a certain size is optimal is just nonsense. Most of the research even talks about state board of education more than local boards of education, and that the structure that we have in the state of Georgia is backwards, that we should have an elected board of education and an appointed superintendent. But the other issue that I wanted to address is this issue of due process, the retroactivity of what he's proposing, and again, it just didn't get the right opportunity for us to fully vet this issue. It never came before the Fulton or DeKalb County delegation, and we got a little notice this morning to the Atlanta delegation, which is, from what I understand, there isn't really an Atlanta, it's really Fulton and DeKalb, and the city of Atlanta is inside of it. But we just got this notice. I just got it today, and never heard about this until today, and we have not fully vetted this, and would ask that you vote against it.
If you would just stay there. We have a question. All right, number 3.
Just a quick comment, Mr. Chairman. There is an Atlanta delegation that's constituted within, if you will look at your rules of the local delegation. There is an Atlanta delegation.
We were properly notified.
You were notified prior to it. Mr. Newby, let me finish. Okay. Number 1, there is an Atlanta delegation. Number two, I felt it was important as a member of the Atlanta delegation to fully brief you as to what we were going to attempt to do here today. And so we held a meeting that lasted approximately an hour and a half, from about 11:30 to a little after 1 today, Mr. Chair. So I do think that we did afford my local delegation that's directly impacted by the Atlanta public school system with an opportunity to sit around a table and have a free-flowing conversation, which we did. That's my only comment, Mr. Chairman.
We saw the bill. I saw the bill. The bill wasn't presented. We never saw it until this meeting today, in this meeting. The bill was not presented at that meeting that was called. This was passed to us in the House while we were in full session today. And it didn't say what we were meeting about, didn't say what the bill was, didn't even talk about the topic. So if you consider that full, duly noted, I don't know what is not.
Okay. Thank you.
Detail what this thing would involve. That's my only comment.
Okay. All right, next speaker. Anyone else? Now line up. Be there. Sure you're there. All right.
I'm Angela Palm with the Georgia School Boards Association, and I simply wanted to remind the committee that last year, as you debated Senate Bill 84 in here, the question did come up about the effective date. At the time, Warren was in question as to whether they would lose their accreditation or not, and members realized that Warren would not fall under Senate Bill 84, and so some of you wanted to change the effective date. At the time, the governor's attorney, Nels Peterson, who was presenting Senate Bill 84 to you, said that the effective date could not be changed, that it could not be made to apply to school board members currently in office because of a constitutional requirement for due process. And so that's why the effective date was left at July 1st, 2010, and didn't refer to anybody prior to that. So I just wanted to remind the committee that that was the explanation at the time, and that was why you went with July 1st, 2010.
All right. Again, you may respond, Representative Lynn.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, and perhaps it's best to ask our legislative counsel, Ms. Howerton, who did an investigation at my request into the constitutionality to address that issue.
All right, Betsy, I'll allow you at this time.
Sure, yeah, there was some question last year, and that was definitely part of the central conversation. If you probably can imagine, it's part of the stopping doing central research in the middle of session and short sense time. And we feel very comfortable with this constitution based on some of the things that Representative Lindsay alluded to earlier as far as no vested rights in the public office, and in addition, this is not retroactive upon an event that happens in the future in the sense of not coming off of probation. So it's not penalizing the current board member for past actions or something perspective. So we discussed that before.
Any other questions? All right. Next speaker.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Nicole Knighton with DeKalb County Schools, and I just want to make you all aware that the DeKalb County School Board of Education has unanimously decided to oppose legislation which would reduce their size. The provision in the bill refers specifically to DeKalb County and I believe Rockdale County, so it is a local issue because it only affects 2 school systems, and they are opposed to this not being a local bill.
I apologize to you for getting you. I would have called you a little later because we were still debating Atlanta, but I will take that since you brought it up. But you are on the DeKalb County School Board?
No, sir. I'm the representative from the school system.
What is your position?
Government relations for the school system.
And you're saying that you're instructed by the DeKalb County School Board to come down and make this statement?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The delegation has been made aware that the school system is opposed to this. And there's 2 other bills that are out related to school board size. Specifically for DeKalb County Schools, they've opposed all the measures.
All the measures, okay. I have a comment, if you would stay there. 11, Representative Jung. Yeah. That. Number 4. All right, Representative Morgan, you have a question to our speaker.
Not for the speaker.
Okay,
Mr.
well,
Chair.
okay. Anyone else for the speaker? Then I'm going to recognize you. Anyone else want to address her? All right. Yes, you have a question, Representative. All right.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to say at appropriate time I'd like to be recognized and make a motion.
Okay, well, okay, no. All right, anybody else? Okay, thank you. All right, Representative Morgan.
Legislative Council, she made a statement that regarding the school board governance bill that we can't penalize people for past action. So could you just clarify that for me? I got a little confused when you said that.
All right, so retroactive law would, in some cases, be unconstitutional if it attempted to attach consequences to actions already happened in the past. So what this does is, if the trigger is in the future, it's for July 1 date if they don't come off of probation at that point, which is within their control. So that's the reason it's not a retroactive statute.
So if I could just follow up. So you're saying that even though the behavior of the board and what they were sanctioned for is a past action, because of the July 1st date, it still allows the governor to step in and suspend members based on past actions.
Not past actions. The governor can step in right now. If the bill passes tomorrow, the governor can step in immediately unless that condition is met on July 1. So it's not for the probation. It's connected. It's certainly related to probation.
Okay.
So it would be based on their conduct from the day this could become law to July 1st.
Okay. That get Representative Morgan's that question? All right. I have two people. I have 10 and 15, but 15 was first. Representative Dash, then I'm coming to 10. I mean, 10 was first. All right, 10. All right, go ahead, Representative Sessler. You want to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Chair.
All right. All right, I'm going to have some help up here because I've got 2 or 3 motions on here that people want to make. So help me out. I need legislative counsel over here, too. Have everyone make your motions. All right, what's your motion? Representative Stetson.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion do pass Senate Bill 79 LC version, or committee substitute LC version 334227S.
All right, I have a motion second. Now to go to Kathy, right?
Mr. Chairman, I have a substitute motion.
All right.
A request to divide the question into 3 pieces.
All right, I have a motion to divide the question into 3 pieces. All right. Do I have a second? I have a second. Okay. Now, Legislative Council, please help me, guys. So I have to take that one first. Is that correct? Right. Have to take that one first. All right, I have some comments, and I'm going to take these comments. I have 2 motions on the floor, a motion to do pass and a motion to divide the question. All right, I have seconds. Okay. Wait a minute. I'm coming. I'm going to take you all. I've got 3 questions. All right. 12 is first. What's your question?
Mr. Chairman, I have no question. I just wanted to make a statement at the proper time in regards to Section 1.
I'll let you make that statement now before we do because I think it's critical. All right.
Okay. I first want to remind the members of our Education Committee in regards to the Section 1 with the school board terms moving them from 2 to 4. Chatham County wishes to be consistent with the rest of the state, and this was the best way of which we saw that we could be able to do this. We also have heard from our Chatham County Board of Education that they're in full support of this, as well as our superintendent, as well as the chairman of the Chatham Board of Education. We have heard from our Chamber of Commerce that they have come forward to also indicate their support, and we want to continue to make a very positive statement in regards to wanting to get the best people possible on our boards, as well as we want to provide a good group of people that our school superintendent will want to continue to stay and work with. And I want to remind this committee that this Section 1 in regards to Chatham County and this has a sunset of 2015 so that the local board will be back in control again. So I would ask the favorable consideration for Section 1 to remain in the bill and a yes vote.
All right, comment from 13, Taylor. Representative Taylor.
It was more procedural, I think, Mr. Chair. Well, I wanted to offer an amendment to remove or to delete lines.
Well, I have a motion right now. I have to vote on the motion.
That's my question.
Yeah. I have to vote. I have to vote on the motions.
I was going to remove a section, but I guess Representative Ash wants us to vote.
She has that. That has to be.
Okay.
they have. Wait, just wait. All right, wait a minute. Number 4, wait a minute. Representative Morgan, just comments now.
Well, it's a question. I had never heard that before. I've been here 9 years, never heard of voting on a bill in 3 parts. So if someone could just explain to me.
We're going to talk about it, yeah.
Explain what that is and why we're doing it. I would really appreciate it.
We're going to talk about that, yes, but I want to be sure. All right, Representative Casas. Then I'm coming.
Mr. Chairman.
I'm going to let him have his say. I'm going to. Before I vote, that's correct. I'm going to.
Mr. Chairman, just for clarification, and we do have legislative counsel to help, but just
Legislative counsel, stay with us and help us.
But to answer Representative Morgan's question.
Representative Morgan, here's your answer. Not listening. All right, here's your answer. All right.
A motion to divide the question, what it essentially does is that it provides for separate votes on sections of the bill as long as those sections can stand alone, which right now all 3 sections can stand alone. However, the bill must move as one. They cannot be voted on as separate bills. So therefore, we will take a vote if the motion passes.
If they divide the question.
First, we have to take a vote on the motion. If the motion passes, then a vote will be taken on each section, and then whichever sections pass will be the construction of the bill.
That's what that means. Everybody understand that? Betsy, is that correct? That'll work. Okay. Now, these are comments. Now, these are questions or comments about what we're getting ready to do. All right, Representative, are you waved? Representative Dixon, I know that's what you want. Representative Dixon, do you have anything you want to say other than this? I'm going to get him to it. All right, now, that's all I have.
Parliamentary inquiry.
Our procedural question, Reverend Taylor.
So we're going to divide it. We're going to vote in each section because each section can stand alone. But if I look at Section 5, it refers back to Section 3. So
we're only going to vote on 3 sections. 3 sections. We're going to vote on the original, the Chatham County, the DeKalb County, and Atlanta. It will die. That's right. If we eliminate Section 3, 5 will die.
Section 3 stand alone.
If that was the only one you voted on.
Vote on 3 and 5 together.
Shh. Listen. Yeah. Whatever's left, you take a final vote, you would, yeah. All right, let's get it right. All right, now, is there anyone that just wants to, I see 3 lights, I want to be sure.
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Chairman.
That's what I want to see. All right, Representative Setzner.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, this is just a statement. No, actually, my phrase it as a question. We're going to actually vote on an actual motion to divide the question.
That's correct.
So if somebody wants to keep the bill intact without voting section by section, they would vote down the motion to divide the question. Now, if that were voted down, there could still be subsequent motions to amend.
There you go.
To strike out a specific section. Is that a more consistent, less chaotic way to address this? I just asked that to the chair because that could still ensue.
That's for each and every member to address themselves. We have a motion. Now, I agree with you. Now, what I want to do, and we're going to explain this before we start, but first, I think we owe it to the author of this bill to be heard. And because before we start voting, where's Senator Carter? You have a second to make your statement because that's his note. He feels it's his bill, and he needs to just say something. So, Representative Senator Carter. All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
This is the last comment, then we're voting.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I want to comment on Section 1. Again, this comes as a request of the Savannah-Chatham County school system, the only school system in this state that has less than a 4-year term. Ladies and gentlemen, my dad used to tell me, he used to say, son, when it looks like everybody else is wrong and you're the only one who's right, you need to stop for just a minute and think, it might not be everybody else. That's the situation we find ourselves in Chatham County. We have to get this fixed. This is the only way we can get it fixed. We are trying to have local control here. They want local control in Chatham County. This is the way we can do it. I appeal to you, please look at this. Please consider it carefully. This is extremely important to our school board, extremely important to our community, as has been witnessed by the Chamber of Commerce here. Thank you.
Okay. All right, we have a motion on the floor. Now, where everybody understands what we're doing, and I'm asking Legislative Council, all my Robert's rules of everything, to be sure we get this right. We have a motion to divide the question. Now, what we're going, and we have a second. So what we're voting on first is the motion to divide the question. If you vote yes, that means we'll take each item one at a time. Is that correct, Betsy? The first three sections, I'm saying, we'll take them and vote on them. If you vote no, then we go back to the second motion. Is that correct? Second, that you have, that Setzler had, which would still be subject to amendment. Is that correct? All right, so here we go. What's your question, Representative Dixon? He can object, but that's up to this committee in the ultimate. Is that correct, Legislative Council? That is correct. In other words, he can object all he wants to, but he can say, I don't accept them, but the committee will decide. When we came in from outside, that's what I checked on. That's what I was told. I thought he can object, and he can tell us if he objects, but then that's what he's saying. He wants his bill is what I heard him say. Okay, here we go. The question is, do we divide the question? All in favor, please raise your hand. All who want to divide the question, raise your hand. That means take it up individually. Raise your hand. Get them up there where we can count. Come on, keep them up. Divide the question. Keep your hands up, please. Don't go up and down. You're looking like a puppet. Jack in the box. We can't. Janet, get them, Janet. 10 yeses. To not divide the question, please raise your hand. That is how many? 8. 10 to 8. The question is divided. Am I correct, Betsy? All right, David, am I correct? Okay. All right, here we go. So we'll take one section at a time. Now, you realize if you vote on these questions, if it passes, that becomes part of the bill. If it fails, it is not part of the bill and it does not move on. Is that correct? Am I correct? Okay. All right. Now, I guess I just take them up one at a time, Betsy. The first one is the Chatham County board size, or board term, term of the board from 2 years to 4 years. All right. We don't need a motion on that either, do we? Just take the vote. All in favor, please, if you want to have that as part of the bill, please raise your hand. This is to keep that one in. If you want to keep the Chatham County in, raise your hands. Everybody raise your hand. 12. If you do not want to keep it in, want to take it out, raise your hand. 6. All right, that's in. The second question on the table is the DeKalb County School Board issue. That is to bring the number from 9 to 7. Is that correct? Everybody agree? All right, if you want to let that be a part of the bill that's moving forward, please raise your hand. The DeKalb issue. If you do not raise your hand. All right. The third issue, the Atlanta School Board issue, allowing the lengthy debate we talked about. I'm not going to go through explain it again because I couldn't right now. But the Atlanta School Board issue, all in favor of leaving that in and making that part of the bill, please raise your hand. What'd you have? 13. If you do not want the Atlanta issue in there, raise your hand. Five. So all three issues are in the bill to move forward. Now we have a bill. Now this is due pass on House Bill. excuse me, Senate Bill 79 as reconstructed. Is that? I have a move. Do I have a second? I have a second. All in favor of moving Senate Bill 79 forward as reconstructed, please indicate by raising your hand. All opposed, like sign. Raise your hand. What's the count? 14-4. All right, it does pass. You go to the, it will be in rules Thursday. All right, if we would, please, thank you, Senator.
Thank you, and thank members of this committee.
Thank
you. Very
you.
much.
Now, Freddie, come up. Please stay with me, some of you. I know some of you got to go. Yes, shh, hold it. Shh. Okay, you'll be carrying it. Be carrying the bill. All right, Representative Lindsay, you'll be carrying the bill. All right, if we would stay with me, we would owe it to Freddie Sims, bless her heart. If you need to leave, just leave me a quorum, please. All right, Freddie, do y'all have us copies of the bill? They're coming down the line. Hey, Betsy, is that...